Hello and welcome to Gatherverse News Unscripted, your home for humanity-centered tech journalism. I'm Lisa Bernard. Thank you for joining me. Today on our show, we are lucky enough to have Monica RS. Monica is a leading expert in immersive technology for learning. If you were lucky enough to see her talk at AWE last week, you would have heard her discuss the convergence of AI and XR for education. As the former head of immersive learning at Meta and having established interactive learning labs during her tenure at Amazon, Monica is a true pioneer in her field, consistently working towards making learning more accessible and engaging. Thank you, Monica, for joining me.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with something you have said, which is you feel the future of education is tribrid. So for any of us who had kids at home during COVID, we know what hybrid is, which was that online learning from the home. Tell me what tribrid is and your vision for that.
Yeah, it's funny during the pandemic, so many people kept saying, let's not waste a pandemic. Let's use it to really understand the opportunities that we have in education moving forward. So the hybrid model, I think part in person, part online, really helped people gain access to some level of learning. We didn't have to shut down learning entirely like we would have maybe 100 years ago. And so that afforded us to deliver something at scale, but it was missing the human element. It was missing the connection. It was missing the ability to interact with 3D objects and explore as we would with field trips or labs or just being in contact with humans. And so immersive technology actually allows us to add that layer into the at-home learning component or even an in-school component where tribrid means sort of seamlessly moving between in-person, online, and then this additional component of immersive spaces to either join together or to be able to explore in that kind of environment. So not necessarily completely transplanting everything we do with education, but if we can add this extra piece when and where it makes sense and figure out how to seamlessly move between all these different modalities, then I think we can really improve how we deliver education and how we consume it, whether it's in the classroom or at home. But it opens up those gateways to allowing us to enjoy it on a deeper level.
And can you give us an example? What might that look like?
Yeah. So, for example, right now, I always kind of use the example of like when I was little, I really loved everything related to astronomy. And so I often went to the encyclopedia. I opened up that page of the first moon landing. There was a picture of Neil Armstrong standing there. That was my only window into that moment in history. And that was enough for me. I found it fascinating. And we think of, maybe having that discussion again in the classroom, maybe watching a video of that first moon landing. But now, through this technology, we can actually fly you to the moon and you can stand exactly where the astronauts did. And you can get the same perspective of the Earth, moon, and sun that they did and really understand that scale and the immenseness of these craters. And that part of the soil is actually orange. And why is it orange? And so I think it changes the way that we consume some of the knowledge that we have, especially in places that we can't go to, whether we want to change scale or size or time travel. Or distance, but you, instead of just sort of remembering in a tiny part of your brain because you had to learn it by looking at it or hearing about it, your whole body actually feels connected to that moment. And you develop some empathy for what the astronauts must have felt like when you're in this experience and you look up, the Earth is so tiny and far away. And you actually catch your breath a second because you feel very far away and very vulnerable, right? And so those are things that are hard to get in any other medium. And so allowing you to feel like you're walking in those, in the footsteps of somebody else, or to travel somewhere where you can gain that extra, this kind of level of awareness is incredibly powerful in these technologies.
Yes, and I believe that you did have an exhibit just like that in the Smithsonian or a collaboration with them. Tell me about some of the other projects, your work in Africa, for example.
Yeah, we recently went over to Africa. And, one of the things that we've always, a lot of people say, oh, but this technology is such a barrier, right? Unless you have like the highest speed of internet and everybody has ability, access to electricity and lots of money to do it. We're not going to be able to scale it. And so part of what we wanted to test was, can we bring it to schools in Africa where there wasn't electricity, there wasn't connectivity? Now, obviously, we had to do some pre-work. We had to make sure they were charged before we brought them. We had to make sure the content was downloaded. But to be able to work with students who, one of the schools we went to, their school was in a tent, and they used biofuel that they created themselves, and they didn't have electricity, and it was a beautiful spot. And they brought a lot of richness through books and through speakers. And when we brought the headsets to them, we took them on an experience where they got to follow an eagle, and it went through this beautiful nature, almost like a national park, flew over a huge body of water. And we thought the experience was all about, the eagle and sort of the way that we want to study that particular part of nature. And the kids got most excited about seeing water because it wasn't something that they get to see in their home. And so to see large bodies of water and to understand what that felt like, to be present and kind of flying over this and watching the eagle interact with it, just reminded me how big and how small the world is all at once, and how we were able to bring this experience to them where they probably aren't going to be traveling outside of their home anytime soon into those kind of spaces. So again, it opens up dialogue, it opens up connection. They were the amount of delight and wonder on their faces after they came out of those experiences, just to be able to bring that to them. And we can do that with students everywhere, whether it's learning about a different culture, whether it's helping them travel somewhere they wouldn't otherwise get to. We can do this no matter where you are in the world, build that empathy and understanding globally.
So that's what's amazing, right? Is it sparks the curiosity and then more questions come from it. You had mentioned that now, just even in recent months, adding AI. Tell us a little bit how that plays in.
Yeah, I mean, I love how everything's changing all the time. And so the best thing we can be is incredibly adaptable. If you think about it, most of our technologies up to this point have been largely passive, right? They're obediently doing what we instruct them to do. And so I think this in turn made our education system kind of the same way, where rote memorization and standardized tests were the norm. It's all we had to really test people on these. Honestly, I don't think any of us thought this was the best way to learn. I just think those were the tools that we had. And so we were kind of locked into it. And so I think now that we're able to sort of move beyond that, and people kept saying our old way of learning was very much to help train us almost to be like robots. It was a lot of memorization. It was a lot of executing. AI, in essence, has now brought the robots, right? And so it's like, well, if the robots are here, let's make sure that we turn education into focusing on being more human. And so, that means like allowing us to focus more on awareness and problem solving and higher order thinking. And the technology can be more about doing things that are tedious and time consuming and beyond our capabilities. And so I think, where we need to start thinking about how we can focus our education is how do we use these tools to increase our curiosity or to increase our imagination, and just our understanding of how I think where we're going to supercharge it is combining all these technologies we have. So if we merge together AI with XR, with sort of the old ways that we were doing things, this triad or this triangular partnership between human and technology machine, I think actually unlocks a huge amount of potential for how we transform education. So within all of these together, we can then create highly personalized experiences where the AI can understand how well you're learning, and it can adapt the environment around you. So if you're overwhelmed, it can start to maybe strip out some of that stimulation. If you've got it and you're on a roll, it might add some extra, challenge for you. But I think when we think about the ability to have something be like our personalized tutor, buddy, companion, one, we never have to learn alone anymore. And two, it can adapt to where we need our questions answered so that we don't stop learning because we can't get our questions answered, or because there's no one there to keep answering when we're really curious and want to keep going. So this, along with all the technologies that we do have, I think are going to fix four of the biggest problems we have in education now, which is engagement, retention, personalized learning, and that skills-based assessment. So if you think about how we typically used to assess people, it was very much through standardized tests at all levels. It was like whether it's corporate training, technical training, or just traditional schooling. But now, through AI, we can start to test people through conversation and chats. With immersive technology, we can make sure that we're understanding body language, using that as part of the assessment, eye tracking. And also coming to the scene is the ability to just go directly to our brain. So we can now use EEG data to really kind of measure the electric activity in our brain. And it can help us uncover things like our cognitive load, our focus and our engagement, our learning styles, our emotional states, and can even detect ADHD and dyslexia long before a normal test would, or before you as a human might even start to pick up on it. So if we can start to combine all this information with how we can assess people differently and then make these fully adaptive, personalized experiences, I think we can fully start to transform the way that we deliver content and experience it. Now, of course, content has been historically very challenging in these technologies, often costing millions of dollars, months to make. But AI, again, is going to supercharge that. There are a lot of tools coming to the market now where we can essentially speak worlds into existence. With a couple of words of text, it will build a 360 environment around you. There's still ways to go with that, but it's helping us understand how this adaptive learning might start to transform around us and move forward. So I love that these new pieces are helping us start to construct a different way of doing it. They are helping us as humans become more adaptable as we move forward, which honestly, we have to. We have to help people be adaptable at this point because we will undoubtedly have job loss, right? The next 10 years, we're predicted to lose, I think, something like 25 million jobs due to AI. And most of them are sort of in where we consider the higher paying jobs right now. It's like mathematician, engineer, financial analyst. And again, we have faced job extinction before, right? And we have recovered and come out stronger. I think this moment is sort of, we're facing something that we as humans haven't seen before. And so if we can be adaptable with it and work with it, we'll create new industries, we'll create a whole lot of new jobs. But it's something that we're going to have to be able to really be forward thinking on and lay those foundations that will hopefully serve generations to come.
So let me ask you, though, about adoption and about resistance, perhaps, from labor unions and teachers who are overwhelmed. Are they going to have to completely rewrite the curriculum? Is this so much more work for them? And of course, the hopeful results are so much more interesting and potentially better for the students. But it sounds like a tremendous amount of work. And again, with labor unions and resistance, lack of funding, what do you think the adoption will be?
Yeah, it's challenging. I often wonder where it needs to start so that it can be successful. And there's no right or wrong answer to this, but often it's like, well, who can act as the hub right now? That I think all these pieces are in thousands of pieces all over the world. They're being incubated in startups. We're seeing them being tested in small pilots. If we can think of who's that right hub in the education space that can pull together the tech and the research and the industry verticals and the solutions from startups and that innovation, I think this moment kind of belongs to like a merger between startups and universities to figure out exactly what those models look like. We need a lot of extra things to support it. We almost need an entirely new nervous system for all the inputs and outputs. Our old learning management systems have a hard time integrating the new technology and we keep failing. So it's one of those things where it's like, maybe we need to rethink that. And so there are a lot of pieces that need to still be worked on before we can go to like a K-12 school with a fully deliverable package that works end to end. Now, that's not to say it's not being used in K-12. There are a lot of brave teachers. There are a lot of incredible leaders in that space who are willing to bring it in and start thinking about it, whether it's in the CTE courses or in one or two of the classes. And we're seeing a lot of success there. But it's those that understand that it's not a perfect deliverable system yet. However, it can add a lot of value. So for educators, I know, I taught for 10 years and most educators go into the field because they want to be that person that gives students the aha moment, that makes them lifelong learners, that makes them curious. To be able to do that for another human is really powerful. But oftentimes they go in and there's a whole lot of red tape. And you're right, it is exhausting. They're already overworked. They're already stressed. They have sort of this like decision overload of people constantly trying to build them new solutions, which they try once and they don't often live up to their expectation. And so there is a little bit of apprehension there. But if we can get all these things correct, I think what it does is actually allows educators to focus more on that piece of being the one who can help unlock some of that curiosity in learners and those connections that will in turn make them incredible independent thinkers and feel that, sort of that light go off. So I'm hoping that this isn't just something that becomes a burden to educators that makes it harder for them. AI actually helps a ton with lesson planning, with grading, with helping them figure out where the value is and what they're actually delivering. It helps the students as well. But if we can all work together and figure out where that sort of that intersection is in that sweet spot that brings everybody forward, there's going to definitely be change. It's going to be a little chaotic in the beginning stages. It always is. But I think, what we need to hopefully come together and decide is, as we get all these new tools, they will help solve some of our biggest problems, including education. But I hope that this little triad that we form never creates any wider divides, right? Like if we can't figure out a way to use this technology that benefits all of humanity by increasing access to education and closing the economic divide, then honestly, we will have done it wrong. And so I want to make sure that in this moment, we bring together the educators, the thought leaders from higher ed to K-12, to those that are actually working on the little pieces independently. And we move forward with a commitment to responsibility and that empathy and wisdom, so that we can get it right. Our education system has been failing for a long time. I think everybody knows that. It's not a surprise to anyone. We need to revamp it. This is our opportunity. And so I hope we can be very thoughtful about it as we move forward.
Yes, I'm really happy to hear you talk about the equal access and, concern for digital divide and all of that. And of course, ethics and all of it is so important. Do you have any time frame, any guess with a crystal ball of how far out are we from this sort of education revolution?
I think it's on an exponential curve. And so as we build new technology, it will in turn create faster and faster progress. And so I think, the XR curve felt slow because we were just building hardware, and the hardware has become great, but then we didn't have enough content to warrant using the hardware more than a couple of times. AI is going to come and suddenly, we've already seen that exponential curve go straight up, but when we blend the two together and we bring it into the education space, it will help create content much faster, and suddenly content won't become the issue, right? So that's going to go up. It's going to help us figure out how to go across all the different modalities that we learn on and pick which one's best. So we're not going to be custom making every single part of this, and it's going to help everyone gain access to tools and information faster than we ever could before. So again, I think it's going to open up new pathways for how we spend that time in the classroom and with each other. And so, in the same way that I think prior to this, I would say probably the most incredible invention was probably the cell phone, because we could suddenly access the world's information from our pocket whenever we were curious, wherever we were. That the evolution was quick, but we didn't quite figure out how to adapt our schooling to it as well. And so I hope this time around, we know that evolution is going to be exponential, and I hope we continue to really think about how we're going to adapt all this together as we move forward. But I'm hoping, it's not going to be immediate. I don't have that crystal ball, but I would say, like we keep saying, like 3 years out and then 5 years out. And so I think that 3 years will be where the tools have gotten good enough that we can start to really pull these things together. Hopefully the technology will be at the right price point and deliver, the right experience that will have that entire nervous system built out so that we can have the inputs and outputs seamlessly going. And honestly, that just might be AI as well. It might be an AI chatbot, the new learning management system. It might be some kind of almost like invisible, intuitive system that allows it to know what content you need and deliver it seamlessly in the best possible way, and keep track of how you're learning across all these digital surfaces so that it's always gathering how you're learning, where you're learning, and making sure you're getting credit for that, which up to this point is really hard to do. We don't do that. So I think, again, hopefully in 3 years, we start to see where those clear pathways are of where we should be building some of this. And hopefully by 5, we're comfortable enough that it's really starting to be used in some of the very first pilots successfully at scale.
Thank you. Thank you for that vision and for looking into the future with us. I'm so grateful, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. You too. Thanks so much, and good
Thank
luck
you.
with all these ventures.
Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. Tomorrow, please join us again right here at noon Pacific time. Priya David Clemens will be joined by Alex Howland with Verbella. Verbella helps companies have employees work in the metaverse rather than in traditional office settings. That's on tomorrow's show at noon Pacific time. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day.